So it's an interesting idea then to then say, can you even have a viable end game in business unless you diversify out?
Well, it's really interesting because let's pretend you do a short play. Okay, let's pretend you build a company and you sell it in 5 years. You work your ring out and you go and do it and you got $1 million.
Yeah.
Right, hypothetically. Now, if you got that $1 million in cash now because you've sold the business, well, it's going to depreciate against inflation. Mm-hmm. So you can't even keep it there without, over that 100 years, it's worth nothing. I do laugh. My nan bought her house in a suburb in Victoria, and she was outraged because it was $9,000. She thought it was worth about 8.5 at the time. And it's worth absolute truckload now.
Yeah.
But I just laugh, that perspective. And it's not that, real estate definitely has gone up, but it's inflation that's played a really big role in that as well. So I look at that and I sit here and go, even if you do have a short-term end game, diversification, whether into shares and funds or property or something, you still have to do something else with it. You can't necessarily create something on a 100-year basis that's going to exist that you could invest through a business you've built up. But I think an even bigger issue, right, and if you really look at this, is that a false precedent has been set that people think they can or they are. So I'll give you an example. I am really disturbed at a bigger level here in a few things, is that most business owners, they're growing on this infinite return idea that they can. And I'll give you an example. They grow this business and then they've got this, well, someday I'll sell it, or someday my kid will take it over, or someday insert what they think their end game is that isn't very well thought out. But the reality is their business isn't actually sellable.
Yeah.
Or their kids don't want to do what they do. And majority of them actually just end up shutting down. So they've been putting in this huge amount of delay and sacrifice for something that fizzles into nothing. And those business owners end up retiring terribly. It's really common.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, isn't it? And I think it's one that is definitely worth deep exploration, because most business owners, there's a variety of reasons that people would go into business. They want to have more autonomy. They want to be, the masters of their own destiny. That's a big one. They want to do their own thing. A lot of people they're entrepreneurial in their thought. They see a problem, they want to solve the problem, and then they want to, expand on that solution and serve other people. There's a variety of different reasons. You can see opportunity, take it, but there's this whole kind of fluidity and this idea that ultimately you're going to be able to, build wealth, right? This is the idea: is that you're going to build a business, you'll grow the business. Most people have this idea that they're going to grow a bigger business, and that eventually they'll either grow a really big business, sell it, or pass it on, right? That's really it, because if you don't sell it, what are you going to do? Close it down? You really don't have that many options. So let's just say you built a business, and let's just say it actually was one of the, fractional percentage that made it past the 10-year mark, because depending on what stats you look at, it's between 75 and 95% of businesses don't make it to their 10th birthday. Now, some of those, because they are not forced to sell, but they just walk away from the business or whatever. But at the end of the day, very few make it past 10 years, which is really interesting in and of itself.
I would even go further and say that of the businesses that make it past 10 years, I'll almost bet nearly all of them had to pivot or rebrand or do something completely different than what was their original intention to make it through that time.
Yep, 100%. But then here's the other thing: is you got to then take that timeline and keep dragging it forward. Keep dragging it forward and go, okay, let's just say you're one of those percentage that you have pivoted and you're surfing the wave of business, and you're surfing the wave of you're constantly dancing the game between changing market conditions and government policies and pandemics, and you manage to run that gauntlet, right? Which is going to be a pretty intense run. We all know, anyone who's in business understands it's an intense run. Doesn't matter if things are going good right now, you just need to ask, okay, what's next? You can never sort of go, all right, this is great. All right, I've cracked the code. There is no code. You can't crack it. You don't have an infinite, you can't really play an infinite return game. Now, drag that timeline forward though. What is the timeline? So let's just say you're a 30-year-old business person, and drag that timeline forward 10 years, you're 40. All right, drag that timeline forward another 10 years, you're 50. Okay. Are you still working in the business when you're 50? Is that the goal? Drag that timeline forward another 10 years. You're 60. Are you still working in the business? Is that the goal? Because at some point, most people have a desire to have more time and more freedom. And hell, I was having lunch with another business owner yesterday, and he was talking to me about this very issue. Now he's been investing in property with us, and it's great. But we were talking about having this very conversation, and the problem is that no one has an exit strategy. Right. So
very few. So I would say I have met a couple of people that have, but I would say it's a 1% thing, if that.
Yeah, totally. So if you keep pulling this timeline forward, like, do you want to keep staying in the business or not? Now, I asked this business owner yesterday. I said, well, what is it you want right now? He said, oh, freedom. So what does that mean to you? He said, I just want to be able to take more time off. Like, I'm happy working and stuff. He's not a lazy guy. He's like, but he wants to have more freedom. So at a certain point that you're going to have a desire to be able to have more autonomy of time. Everyone desires that. So then you got to ask yourself, if I'm 60 and still working in the business, is that going to serve that goal or not? And if not, if the goal is not to stay working in your business when you're 60, or in 20, 30 years time from now, if a 30-year-old business owner, then what is the exit strategy? Is it to sell? Now, as you've touched on, most businesses aren't built to sell. 66, we touched on this on another episode, but remind me of the stat, 66% of businesses don't sell?
Yeah, so if you list your business with a broker, or anyone does, 66% of the businesses that are listed don't actually sell, is the stat. So only 1/3 of businesses put up for sale actually sell. And then disturbingly on the other side, the largest majority of reason for close, let's say for someone post 60, is actually health.
Yep.
So they get sick or something like that, and then they're unable to continue, and they just only have the option to shut it down.
Okay, totally. So what you then decipher from that is that a lot of businesses don't make it for a start. They just don't make it. Then of the businesses that do manage to make it, or we'll say make it in a broad sense, they're alive, right? Don't know what level of health the business is in, but they're alive. Of the people who try and sell it, 66% don't sell, which means that 2/3 of business owners who try to sell end up stuck in the business until they're old and grey and have to retire because they're sick and just close the business down, or they have to walk away and start again, which is fascinating. And it's terrifying, right? It's terrifying.
You're making the casino sound like good odds here, Goose.
Yeah, well, it's crazy, right? Because I love business too, right? I left high school when I left high school early, right? I'm a high school dropout. I was already running businesses and doing my own thing and running gigs and doing all this kind of stuff. And I went to my parents when I was in the first term of year 12, and I was like, guys, I'm not sure that I want to I'm already too busy doing all of this other stuff. I was organizing festivals and I was like literally had my own business. And they said, look, we totally get it. It makes sense. We can clearly see that's where you're going. We support you and all of that kind of stuff. And they endorsed my decision to bail out of school early, right? So I've been doing this my whole life. Now, varying degrees of success and efficacy, of course, right? But I love it. However, it's crazy at the same time, because unless you have a strategy to diversify and to build some actual security or some asset wealth base that it can actually bolster your desires to operate in business, you're essentially constantly just treading water to a certain degree.